Check, check. 1, 2. Hey. Welcome back to yet another stream. This time we are in the PC12 by SimWorks Studios. It's the latest update from them. And my first time, first time flying this updated version. I forgot that I wasn't streaming at the start of the flight here, so forgive me for starting things off here in a not so cold and dark state. I basically just started her up. We've gone through all the basic tests already. I have to say, notably, you are now able to test the autopilot.
Warning, autopilot trim.
And on top of that, they fixed the issue with the fuel quantity gauge, where you had to hold down the fuel reset button to get the gauge to wake up. So that's nice. Anyways, let's get the flight plan going here. We're going from Margate. Is there a reason this airport's not showing? Straight to Aplip. I don't know why this thing is so obsessed with Australia. We'll jump on the UQ29 airway, where it will then spit us out at above. At which point we will then set ourselves up for the RNAV approach for runway 26, unless the weather changes in the meantime. But for now, that's going to have to do. We are set to fly at 22,000 feet. We've adjusted the cabin pressure for 2.3, so 1,000 feet above our intended cruise altitude. Final control is on. We'll put on the oxygen just to make sure we don't forget it. Otherwise, I think I'm happy with how everything is configured. The trim is set. And we'll turn the pitot heat on just before departure. I hate the fact that they always put these people out in front of the aircraft. But what are you going to do? Let's get ourselves, excuse me, it was early morning for me. What's going on here? Check, check. Check, check. Okay, cool. I hope you guys can hear that. And we're going to go over to 1228, 1215. I think that's it for now. Alrighty. Margate traffic, Pilatus Zulu Sierra Alpha Papa Sierra is taxi controlling shortway 05 Margate. Alright, brakes release. I'm not going to turn on the taxi lights, no need. Let's set the QNH to the local setting. So let's get the EFIS display here onto GPS. I think it's so weird that the flight controls are sort of linked or interlinked with each other, basically. I mean, I'm moving the rudder pedals only, and it's deflecting the ailerons as well. I feel like this taxiway is too narrow for us. So. Margate traffic, Pilato Suva Sierra, Alpha Papa Sierra, backtracking runway 05. Margate traffic. We'll backtrack the runway. Let's get the taxi lights on, strobe, recogs. I wonder if they fixed the recog lights. Want the recog lights to pulse. Did they fix them? Let's see. Nope, they didn't. Still constant while the actual reflections are showing that the lights are pulsing. Alright, we'll go set ourselves up for the departure here. Transponder comes on, might as well get the landing lights on as well. And the probe heat can come on as well. Don't know why it made a bong, but it was something that I didn't do wrong. Flaps is set, trim is set. Love the sounds of this thing. Margate traffic, Pilato Suva Sierra, Alpha Papa Sierra, departing runway 05, right-hand turn out over the coast, reaching westbound, climbing flight level 220, Margate traffic. Okay. So that's us. Condition lever full. Make sure the inertial separator is on. Everything else seems to be configured the way I like it. Passengers are all ready to go. Oh, we can see baggage in the back. Excuse me. Here we go. Let's see what she's got. Apparently not going to skate around as much as she did before. All right. Rotate. Come on. There she goes. That's good. That's a lot better behavior on the ground. Tapping the brakes. Gear coming up. And trimming. Do our right-hand turn here. Us into the climb. Gloves can come up. Reflections look like that. Alright, let's go direct to our first waypoint here. The adapter should have been turned on as soon as we retracted the wheels. Here. I'm at about 140. Alright, autopilot, come on. Oh, what are you doing, autopilot? What was that? Okay, so they gave us a broken autopilot, menu updates. Don't believe I did anything wrong there. about 140 knots here. Actually, yeah, let's make it slower because pressurization system does struggle to keep up. We're at about 2,000 RPM, I mean 2,000 feet per minute here. Let's try again. So yaw damper on. We go nav mode. And apparently arm should get you the VS to match what you were climbing at before, which it looks like it's done. We've armed 22,000 feet of flight level 220. We are in nav mode here. Got a bit of a crosswind, so that's probably why the offset. Alright, so we're going to keep an eye on the torque gauge here. While we turn off the inertial separator. Make sure the engine does not over torque. You notice the ITT should decrease. More air enters the engine, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Okay, coming back on the power a little bit, because I can see it torquing a little bit close to the yellow there. Alright, happy with that. So just to double check, gears up, flaps are up. The aircraft should automatically be trimming us to remain in coordinated flight. Continue at about 2,000 feet per minute. Keep an eye on the pressurization gauge here, so it looks like we are pressurizing. Coming up to 10,000 feet. Most places in the country, 9,000 is above your transition level, if I'm not mistaken. Transition altitude, sorry. So we'll go to standard. All our gauges here. 013 about. 013. Alright, with 10,000 feet being there, we'll turn off all the other flashing lights except for the strobes. Smooth enough for us to turn the nose spec. Well, we can keep the nose spec on, see both sides and get them off. The control is working nicely now, so that's another fix from the previous version, i.e. so far I'm noticing fuel gauge is working now. The cabin temperature is behaving more realistically. And the autopilot test function is not active. However, it seems like it's still a bit buggy. As we saw during our departure there. Beautiful day for flying, and I love transitioning from VFR to IFR flight. Just again demonstrates the versatility of this simulator. Not that you can't do the same thing in X-Plane, but I mean, you can't beat this beautiful ortho that's just everywhere you go. I don't have to manually insert any of this. It just loads in automatically, and it's super immersive. And of course, flying VFR with actual satellite imagery as reference versus just generic terrain. I mean, it's it can't be beat. So while I'm still 100% an XP fan. I do still believe it is the better simulator overall, but unfortunately, for X-Plane, it's really hard for me to go from looking out the window and seeing this to, you know, going back to the old school generic terrain textures. And yes, of course, I could sit here, you know, importing ortho, but you know, that requires you to know exactly where you want to be flying. And for me, again, flying is just, you know, it's a spur of the moment thing. I fly where I feel like flying, or what I feel like flying. And, you know, I just having to put in ortho manually just doesn't afford you that kind of flexibility. Interestingly enough, as I check this panel out, the endurance is working. I wonder why that is the case. That's interesting. I want to just keep an eye on this differential. Might be a good idea to slow down our rate of descent here. Okay. Autopilot's responding a little bit better to changes. You know, flipping between the altitude window and the BS window, and adjusting your BS always was a bit of a tricky process. Just because the aircraft would, you know, very abrupt changes with whatever you set in the autopilot window. Anyways, we're doing good. Pressurization system's keeping up, and we got about 2,000, well, I mean, just under 3,000 feet to go. Still making our way to Applip. Our first point of our first waypoint. Let's pull up the charts here for you guys. So earlier today, we took off from Virginia Airport or Airfield. We're here. Flew VFR along the coast, the A2A Comanche. I don't know why the frame rates are so crappy. Landed at Margate. We've now taken off from Margate, and we're flying to Port Elizabeth. Applip, the initial waypoint.
Warning, cabin pressure.
Alright, we're about to level off now. Let's slow it down here. And yeah, once we reach Epvov, we'll turn right towards Turkey, continue with the RNAV approach into Port Elizabeth. So no need to stress too much about that alarm. Leveling off now just means that the differential is starting to catch up with us here. We're still well away from the red line. And as mentioned, we are now about to level off, so it's going to give the pressurization system time to catch up. There you go. 0.2,000 feet more, flight level 220. So the cabin altitude is still below 10,000, well below 10,000. Can we actually, what's the rate? So One thing I've noticed, and I don't know if this is realistic or not, but you can't, that makes sense. It says to increase your cabin rate of climb or descent. You can play with this knob here, but it seems like it'll only be functional if you go over to the manual mode. That's how I see it. The same with this temperature knob here. The cabin altitude warning has gone away. As you can see, we're now below the yellow arc. And we're now settling into cruise phase here. Go into the PC12 manual, we can see if we can find the performance charts. Cruise performance, we want something close to maximum performance because we're not paying for the fuel. Flight 220, we need to aim for a torque about 29.9, which incidentally is just about where we're at. So we're going to leave the power lever where it is and take whatever ground speed we can get, which currently is 256 knots with a 26 knots, about a 26 knot headwind. See, it's really cloudy up ahead, so we might with some cloudy weather as we arrive into Port Elizabeth. Let's see what our tablet says here. As far as the weather is concerned. Go to Port Elizabeth, see yes, it's VFR, but we want to know a little bit more. At 10, scattered, cloud layer 2,500, temperature 22, dew point 17, QNH 1017. So, all in all, a relatively pleasant day for flying. So far, she's handling a lot better. Apart from that random autopilot glitch on departure, autopilot seems to be doing a better job acquiring altitude, more specifically responding to adjustments in vertical speed. So for those unfamiliar with the PC12, I mean, we can go through a little cockpit tour here. Starting with what's in front of us. As you can see, is pretty much replicated for the co-pilot, with the exception of a few extra gauges. So here we've got the flap gauge. Basically 4 flap settings, 0, 50, 30, 40. Typically we'll use 30. Sometimes if you really want to, you can use 40 if the runway is particularly short. Got the indicated airspeed gauge here. You've got a Bendix King artificial horizon and a horizontal situation indicator, along with the sort of semi-digital altimeter, vertical speed indicator, our RMI radiomagnetic indicator, along with the nav2 VOR receiver, standby altimeter here, standby artificial horizon over there. This would be the altitude setting for the autopilot. We'd have to remember to hit the arm switch to signal to the autopilot that it needs to capture this altitude once it arrives at it. Here we've got the ELT, emergency locator transmitter, like emergency location transmitter, something like that. So if the aircraft were to get into an accident, this thing would automatically trigger a distress signal. It would get sent to the search and rescue satellite network. I think it's, what was it, the SARSAT, Inmar SARSAT or something like that. I used to know it was like 205 hertz or megahertz. I don't know, I can't remember anymore, but it sends off a signal at a very specific frequency to the satellite, which then relays your emergency signal to the nearest rescue center. And in that signal, or part of that signal, obviously contains your position. So that obviously gets left in the armed position. You can manually trigger it. It's supposed to make an alarm sound, but it doesn't. That's disappointing. Moving right along, we've got sort of our very early style EFIS display for the engine instruments. Torque gauge, ITT, internal turbine temperature, and the NG, which is the percentage RPM of the gas producer. Typical turboprop. Well, I say typical, but it's kind of not typical in the sense that, unlike a typical turboprop, you would see here for your power levers, you would have a power lever, you would have a separate lever for the RPM control, and then you'd have another lever for your condition lever. And for the astute among you might notice that we do not have an RPM lever. That's been done away with, and sort of the function of which has been merged with just the power lever, and now you've got just basically one power lever and a condition lever, with the RPM automatically being controlled by the engine control system or management system of the aircraft. Maintaining currently about 1700 RPM here in the cruise. Very strange. Fuel quantity reads 0, but the gauge here, so it didn't quite fix the... It's frustrating because I'm going to have to hit the fuel reset button. There it is. So, I don't know if that's realistic or not, but whereas before you had to hold the fuel reset button to bring the fuel quantity gauge to life, it seems that you still have to hold it in to get the rest of the fuel gauges to wake up here. So now we have the endurance indication working as well as the fuel quantity readout in pounds. Quite amazing actually. This thing's got at just 22,000 feet an endurance of 5 hours, and we're actually at the higher power setting for the cruise profile. Very impressive. So I think the rest is self-explanatory. Like you said, the RPM from the propeller, the outside air temperature, endurance, how much fuel you've used so far, which is now incorrect because I've reset this gauge here. I feel like the fuel reset should only affect this gauge, but I'm not a real PC12 pilot, so what do I know? You got your generators 1 and 2 readouts, the amperage on each one. We've got the DC voltage here, 1 and 2. We do have 2 batteries, bat 1 and bat 2, and also 2 generators, Gen 1 and Gen 2. And yeah, batteries are fully charged now as we're flying because they're being charged by the generators on the ground when the engines are off. This is particularly important readout because it will help us determine whether the battery is strong enough to start the engines. What else we got? We've got the annunciator panel here. We go to the lamp test switch. You should be able to see all the warning lights light up. And then here we've got a control panel for the EFIS display. Because we've got the GTN 750 installed here, I feel like not all of these functions are going to be working. But you've got your ARC. Basically just choose which mode of display you'd like. Nav sets it to what nav function you would like displayed on this HSI. Currently we're using GPS 1, which is our GTN 750 over there. There was the ability to display things like airports, navigational beacons, I think even your flight path, your flight plan route, but like I said, I don't think that's implemented yet. Even if it was, I don't know, it might conflict with the GTN as the primary display for navigation in this particular aircraft would be the GTN 750. We can put displays for our so we have our analog and digital RMI readouts here, so you can see VR1 and VR2. You can pop in ELV here. Can we not put, pretty sure we should be able to filter for it. 1145 is what we're looking for. Alright, anyways. 1145. There you go, ELV, VOR. We are actually in range, and there you can see it being DME being read out, as well as seeing that the analog display is also showing, pointing to the navigation station. If we go to the readout here and we pop that in, you'll see that the gauge is also, the other needle will jump to life, showing VOR2. Additionally, we can also have it show, sorry, this one, the GPS, point to the GPS. I don't know if number 2 does that. Don't think so. Oh, I think it can if I use because the Copilot I think also has, yeah, its own little, I don't know. I think it does work actually. Let's try again. Oh, there, it also points to the GPS, yeah. We'll have the one pointing, oops. whoopsie there. That should have kicked off the nav hold and made us fly in a roll hold, which is good. That's what's happened. Go back to nav. And we'll hold, slave this one to a VOR. And the big one, the big pink one can be saved to the GPS. Precision eye can be set over there. Brightness over there. Course knob over there. Heading over there. And here we should have weather radar, but that's not implemented yet. Or I'm not even sure if it will be implemented ever, but let's hope. Continuing rightwards. As mentioned, we got the GTN 750. This is the PMS GTN, so I paid for the first year, and thereafter you can pay annually or you can pay once off, I think it is. Oh no, I think it was, you can pay, you could just outright pay. It's not a subscription, it's a once-off payment, but you can choose to pay for the one-year trial, which is fully functional, a fully functional product, but obviously only having access to it for 1 year. Then you get from the second year a discounted price, which will total the original cost of the product. So in other words, they allow you to use their product for a year at a discounted price, and you're able to then pay the residual if you want to continue using it. So far I like it. I had the Garmin trainer, so the TDS one is available for Flight Simulator 2020, Microsoft Flight Simulator. That one is a yearly subscription. The only reason I didn't go for that one is because of the subscription pay scheme, as well as the fact that it's the trainer version. So yes, you're getting the authentic experience of an actual GTN 750 replica, at least in terms of software, but from what I could understand, the ARAC does not update regularly. It will be outdated, and you know, I'm paying a subscription with Navigraph to keep my ARAC up to date, so it just doesn't feel right to have the GTN that runs off old data. So I went for the PMS GTN 750, and like I said, it's, you know, it's not 100% to the real thing, but pretty much all the features are there. Yeah, I don't really have any, you know, big issues with it. As mentioned, all of the functions are there, although I have yet to figure out how to turn this weather radar on. Weather radar was part of the features, it was on the features list, for some reason it's not showing. Speaking of weather, we can go into flight plan here, click on Port Elizabeth, go to its information box here and get the weather data. That's quite a nice feature. We can still see that the weather is pretty much what it was before. I think it's the same weather report. It's really cool. Should have traffic, we have airspaces, all sorts of extra bits and bobs. So yeah, GTN 750 along with the smaller GPS, I don't know what its numerical designator is, but basically they come together. You'll have your navigation 1, 1 radio navigation, 2 radio here, COM1 and COM2 over here. They both share the same features, I think, except with the default nav button, which applies only to this display. I like to keep this one on while we're in the cruise, so I can just keep an idea. It's just your standard sort of parameters: distance from the next point, this is your direct track, this is your actual track, your bearing, ground speed, and your estimated time en route. So we're just sort of 3 minutes away from Sakim. We are about a quarter of the way to our destination. What else? Transponder gauge, ADF gauge. ADF we'll be able to see by hitting this button and telling this needle to point towards whatever navigational beacon we're aiming at in terms of VOR, or point to the ADF. This is a standard transponder and replicated gauges with Copilot. Audio panel here, you can decide to listen to COM2 only and transmit on COM2, listen to COM1, or you can choose to listen on COM1, transmit on COM2, and you can see the functions are or the GPS, the GTN is receptive to those functions. Nothing else is really simulated apart from the fact that you can listen to your program navigation beacon. You can barely hear it. Very soft. Can't get it to be louder than that. Heading down, you've got your EFIS. So a lot of these buttons you're not going to really be using. You just leave them in the normal position. I don't know what this actually does. This might just identify the different sources of navigational data that displayed on your EFIS display here, or it might swap the two. I'm not sure. I don't want to play with that right now. We don't really use that. The recog lights or recognition lights, either you can have them pulse or be on normal, which will have them shine steady. EPS, I don't know what that is. That's probably very similar to your ELT, if I'm not mistaken. Emergency position system, maybe? I don't know. But you do need to test it before you leave. Something I think is different with the updated version of this aircraft is that this light, I think, is only supposed to come on after 5 seconds of holding the test button down, so that's changed. So AHRS 1 and 2. Again, this is sort of where your directional systems are getting the information from. I used to know the difference, I can't remember, but basically slaving my HSI, my DG to the AHRS allows for automatic correction for gyro drift, right? It's a much more sophisticated system than the DG you would have seen in the Comanche we just flew. That one required regular manual updating to stay calibrated with the magnetic heading, but the AHRS system utilizes its own more precise gyro that I think compensates for all the errors, and you can slave this gyro to that more sophisticated gyro by running it in the slaved option, right? I mean, we could probably test it out and see if it works. We're going to go to the second one, and we'll take the Copilot's DG or HSI off the slave mode and put it to DG and see if there's a discrepancy between the two. Theoretically, this one should start to drift. Oh, yes. Yeah, there we go, there we go. I remember now. Counterclockwise, clockwise. That's what there was. So this is how you would manually adjust it. There you can see. You can manually adjust it, because in the Comanche and all the other smaller aircraft, you would have a little button here or knob here that you can rotate to adjust it, to calibrate it to the actual magnetic compass heading. If you put it back to the slave mode, you'll see automatically it jumps back there. So it does work. Yeah, so that's just, these are just the adjustment switches, clockwise, counterclockwise, and DG and slave. Tells this gauge which information to display. Basically, is it going to follow the AHRS guidance system, or is it going to rely on its own gyroscope, which is prone to drift, as all gyros are. The difference being that this gyro doesn't have the ability to self-correct itself. The other one, the AHRS, does, to my understanding. You can see all these blotches are NEXRAD blotches. Alright, this gives us information about weather. We can actually see that there's some potentially nasty weather here on our right. Something we gotta be weary of, because NEXRAD is a bit delayed. This is not live. This is sort of downloaded from an online source. So this could well be weather that is in front of us right now. So we just want to be weary of that. We're not going to be able to climb it, but we might want to descend out of it. So it's getting a little bumpy. We're going to tell people in the back to put their seatbelts on. Maybe it'd be better if we turn away from it just to be safe. So let's go to heading 230. Before we do that, make sure there's no air traffic control online. There isn't, and we'll go heading mode. And let's turn away from that cloud just in case it is some nasty weather. Fly this heading until we're clear of that weather, and yeah, you can see there was actually a little bit of orange in front of us, so it's good that we decided to deviate. So as you can see, even though this is a pressurized aircraft, we're able to fly at relatively high altitudes. We don't get to fly as high as the airliners do. Just don't have that capability. And as a result, you'll find that we do end up bumping heads with some weather, even at this altitude. If we were at 38,000 feet plus, like some airliners fly at, we probably would not have had to worry about this this bit of cloud just outside our windows. I need to take a quick break to stretch my legs, maybe make some coffee. Just to finish things off here, over here we've got the pressurization system, the electronic climate system, I think it is. Anyway, this is the climate control system. Manual, auto, and off. It's obviously left in auto unless there are issues. It should maintain the cabin temperature at a comfortable temperature. I don't think we can actually control it. I think it just aims for what, something around 21 degrees Celsius. Can, however, go to manual. However, that would also mean that we would have to take manual control of the cabin pressure system, which again would require us to regulate the cabin pressure manually. The backup transponder system over there. We've got circuit breakers over here. Whether they work, I'm not sure. But you can click them. Look at our chronograph here, basically just clock and route timer. You can hit the button there and it should start counting. What else? We've got adjust our rudder pedals, forward and back. Down here, the trim indicator. You can see it says auto trims. The aircraft trims itself out automatically. Everything was in the green for departure, including the rudder trim. Now you can see rudders trimmed out to be flush with the aircraft's sort of borderline, or what's plumb line. We're now flying nice and fast, and the effects of the vertical stabilizer strong enough to overcome the torque effects of the engine for the most part. Everything else is basically just like emergency switches, so we can manually change the trim via those switches. We can override, I think, the trim system here, as well as the flap system over there. We've got the manual override, so this is like a backup emergency throttle in case something happens with this one. We've got the condition lever, power control lever, flap lever, and various lighting switches over here. I'll leave it on, I guess, it's kind of nice. That's pretty much it. I mean, we can go to the overhead panel here. We've got all our test switches that you saw me use, or would have seen me use if I remember to turn the stream on during the start of the aircraft. External lights, fuel pumps, starter switches. We've got our anti-icing and de-icing systems over here, cooling and heating systems as well. And this is our electrical panel over here. Battery generator switches, avionics switches. We've got the non-essential bus here, which stays in order, but we can override it. We've got the inverter switch and a standby bus here as well. kind of, I think, used for emergency power if our main power fails, especially the battery. And I think it's something that pilots also use on the ground before actually turning the aircraft on. It powers, I think, just basically your radio, and allows you to talk to the control tower, having only the radio powered, conserving the battery power, or the power of the main batteries for the engine start. But I don't think the limiting function of this PMS GTN 750 is that it's stuck on the main avionics bus, so you can't use it on the standby bus, and that's a problem because the GTN 750 is what controls our radio, or both radios actually, radio COM1 and COM2, so we'll have to drain from the main battery if we are to talk to the control tower. Okay, I've forgotten that we're actually on a deviation here, so we're going to go and just go direct back to Zakim and hit the nav switch so that we can go back to navigation mode here, and yeah, we'll just proceed direct to the waypoint that we were flying at earlier, At least we're well clear of the weather now. Alright, so above, I feel like it's not very far from the airport. I think it'd be reasonable to be at, what do we need to be at for Turkey? 3,000 feet, so I think, oh, 5,300. So I think we could actually do above at 8,000 feet, I think is a reasonable altitude to be at. Or let's make it 7,000. So above at 7,000. Save. We can go here to utilities, and target waypoint can be above 7,000. I don't know why it doesn't automatically update this, but there you go, 7,000. We want to send it about 1,500 feet, and offset, no offset. There you go. So we're going to descend in about 13 minutes. Before that happens, I would like to stretch my legs quickly, so please excuse me as I step away, make myself something to drink. I'll be back with you guys shortly. Let me put you guys in the passenger seat here, and yeah, feel free to enjoy these views until I return. Alright, seems like I'm just in time for the descent. Got my tea in hand here. How are we doing? Alright, we're going to start our descent now, so let's bring this down to about 7,000 feet. We're going to arm it. Oh no, you arm and then engage. Okay, so the autopilot still loves to jump like a maniac. Alright, the barber pole's at least working. We're going to come back onto power here so we don't overspeed. We'll try and maintain about 200 knots indicated for now. That should keep us on a nice steady sort of deceleration all the way to our destination. So as we're descending, it's probably a good time to set the pressurization system for our arrival. I think it's about 300 feet, 230 feet to be precise. Okay, so we'll go, I think you can set it, as long as it's within 100 feet, it should be fine. Oops, looking at the wrong scale. So there's 500, so about there I'd say is fine. So that's depressurizing. Now heading to our next waypoint. So this thing says about 1,500 is good, so we'll keep with the 1,500 descent grade. We can just go back to the default thing here and we can see, okay, we are heading to EPFIV and then we'll be on that RNAV approach, provided the weather is still favoring that runway. So I'll just quickly double check in my tablet here. Increase speed a little. I don't want to get less than 200 knots, but I think 200 knots will be a good target speed for once we hit the clouds there. It might become a little bit turbulent. Seatbelt signs and whatnot are still engaged. Everyone else is chilling here in the back. Okay, back on the mic here. Tea is finished. Okay, it's all looking good. I'm gonna stay at about 210 knots for now. Indicated. So as planned, you can see we're gonna reach above at about 7,000. What I did a few minutes ago was I also put in the ILS approach information just for in case. In fact, I plan on following. Actually, no. We'll comply with the RNAV approach fully, but the ILS is there as a backup, and if we need to go around, we can set up for the ILS approach. We're currently how far away from this airport? 129. 129. Put everything on the GPS, or the VOR rather. So we're 40 miles away from the airport. We've still got a ways to go. Actually, maybe a little bit on the high side here, so we're gonna slow down our descent rate. Slow to 200 so that we don't hit these clouds going too fast, as they might bring some turbulence with them. I wonder if this thing will automatically activate the RNAV approach. Let's see. I'm not going to do anything to the GPS. Let's see if it will automatically take us to Turkey. Okay, 10,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and set local QNH 017. Get the recog lights on so that we have a little bit extra visibility to the other aircraft. Come back on the power a bit here and slow ourselves down. 200 knots. That'll take us down to 5,300. Still armed. Well, let's take ourselves down to 6,000 rather. We are going to the airport. Okay, so let's activate the approach. Should take us direct to Turkey. Put my TCAS on there just because we're getting closer to an airport. Here we go. So, yeah, Turkey we need to be at 5.3. Slow down our descent rate even further to about 1,000 feet per minute. We're going to maintain 200-ish knots. Once we get closer to the... I might as well say it now. Port Elizabeth traffic, Pilato Zulu, Sierra Alpha Papa Sierra, just past Ebib, about 30 miles east of the field, descending through flight level 70. For the RNAV approach runway 26, Turkey transition, Port Elizabeth traffic. Okay, that cloud doesn't look too good, so I'm gonna fly another little deviation here. So let's go heading hold. Just sidestep this dark bit of cloud. Could be cumulonimbus. Continue our descent here. Let's level off at 6,000. Not a good way to do that. Yeah, we'll keep the speed up to about 200 knots here. That would probably not have been nice to fly into real life. This nasty weather, we'll turn back towards Turkey. Increase the power a bit here as we level off. Frame rate of this aircraft is not good. The TBM has basically all the same features as this aircraft and more, and it's silky smooth on frames. It's, you know, if I had the option to get rid of this cabin, I don't need all these weird avatars, and you know, I mean, I don't want to be a hater, but like all these extra little features, I mean, really, we don't need them. No need. Let's be real. Anyways, back to Turkey. Actually, let's go T-Bib. That seems to be a bit of a steep steep turn for us. So T-Bib, we need to be at 3,000 feet, so let's start that descent. Apparently you can go armed, hit the engage button, down to 3,000 feet. Why she's jumping up and down like that? So basically going to use this little arc to guide me to T-Bib. As in, help me choose the correct descent rate to reach that waypoint at 3,000 feet. Check to make sure that the QNH is the airport's QNH 1018 actually. There it is. Port Elizabeth traffic, Piper, correction, Pilatus Lucera Alpha, Papa Sierra is 16 miles east of the field, descending to 4,600 feet for the RNAV approach, runway 26, report final, next, Port Elizabeth traffic. Alright, so we're traveling quite fast, but that's the beauty of a turboprop. You can slow down real quickly. Brakes running a little warm. 20,000 feet here. Alright, we're going to continue our descent below to 1,900. And Port Elizabeth traffic, Pilatus Zulu Sierra Alpha Papa Sierra on a 10 mile final, runway 26, full stop landing, Port Elizabeth. Why are we not descending? Silly autopilot. Can we descend, please? My goodness. It's frustrating. Look at that, it just goes over. So stupid. Really making it hard to like this aircraft, I'm telling you. Freaking stupid autopilot. Now behind schedule for the descent. We can lower the wheels as long as we're below 177. We're coming up to 160, so that's safe enough to lower the wheels, get some extra drag going. Landing taxi lights on. Inertial separator can come on. Excuse me. Alright, I'm going to disconnect the autopilot here. And the yaw damper. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead manually.
Sync rate.
Visually the rest of the way.
Sync rate. Sync rate. Sync rate.
Just pull up the ILS here just to kind of get an idea of where we are with the glide slope. And we are high. It's fine. Okay, first launch flaps. And come down. We're comfortably in the white arc now. Some power on to the engine here. You can see the aircraft yawing with the power changers. That's very normal. It looks like two whites and two reds there in front of us, which is good. The gear is down, 3 green, working on the flap still. The oil dampers off. We have our clearance to land, theoretically. Alright, that's flaps 30. We're just going to use flaps 30. There's no need for us to be drifting up a little bit. I believe that is realistic. Aim for about 80 to 90 knots here. Lights are as they should be. Alright, so we are ready to land. This trim is very slow. Alright, there we go. For this part of the world. I didn't set my minimums. What do you mean? Anyways, we are VFR. So I need our super low for some reason. Okay, I don't know why we're yawing so aggressively. I guess it is maybe. I don't actually know why we're yawing like this. It should be in the opposite direction because that's where the crosswind is coming from. Alright, we're down. Ailerons into the wind. Make sure we do have reverse thrust. Alright. Just missed the taxiway. Just backtrack it here a little bit. Why are we not turning? Why are we not turning? Why do I need so much brake? Alright, we made it down.
Warning, trim.
So let's bring ourselves to a stop here. Get the aircraft up properly. Port Elizabeth traffic, Sierra Alpha, Papa Sierra, clear runway 26, taxi into parking, GA parking, Port Elizabeth. Alright, so flaps can come up. We're going to reset the trim here. Trim is reset. We can go ahead and turn off these guys. Probes can come off. Just wanted a standby. Weather radar, if we had it, would be off. The O2 supply can come off. Alright, let's continue taxi here. Let's get some of the sounds. Left clear, on the right, no other traffic here, it's just us. Separator some time.
Warning, avionic bus. Warning, essential bus.
Should wait for the prop to stop turning before turning the beacon off, but whatever. That's it. Control lock back on. Is it not working? This click spot still doesn't work. This is very, very frustrating. Probably need to zoom in or something. Then it might work. Nope. Very frustrating. So the click spots don't work properly still. The autopilot is still very twitchy, very finicky. You know, I hate to compare it with the TBM the whole time. But really, I mean, the TBM just shows that it's possible, that there really shouldn't be a reason why this autopilot is so bad. And you know, like, I think part of the frustration for me is just that I was looking forward to this aircraft for months. The PC12 is probably at least was my all-time favorite turboprop, and that's saying something, right? I love the King Air, you know, and if we go into the military realm, you know, I love the C-130. But basically, I like any kind of turboprop. Even the Beech 1900 is really cool. But I have to say, since coming across the TBM via that Stevo Knievo guy on YouTube, and now actually being able to fly it inside Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, thanks to Black Square, you know, I have to say that probably the TBM is now overtaking the PC12, and you know, maybe it's this mod that's just put a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to the PC12. It's weird. I have to say that certain flight simulator aircraft have ruined the actual aircraft for me. Case in point would be like the DC-3, right? The DC-3 that comes with a sim, you know, it's really mediocre, let's be honest, and it's not at the fidelity that I would really want it to be at. But then again, you know, I think it was made in partnership with Asobo, and you can't expect those aircraft to be, you know, particularly, you know, study level. But yeah, it's like kind of ruined the DC-3 for me. When I think about the DC-3, I think about that add-on, and I get turned off by the idea of flying a DC-3. And a DC-3 has always been probably like one of my top 5 aircraft I would love to fly in reality if I ever were to be able to get my pilot's license. But in the same way, I mean, the point I'm trying to make here is that the PC12, I hate to say, because I'm a fan of SimWorks Studios, but it's like SimWorks Studios has ruined the PC12 for me, just because, you know, they handled the hype around the product poorly. You know, the kind of updates we were getting was giving us the impression, or at least giving me the impression, that the product wasn't very far off from release, maybe another month or two. And it turned out to be like 6 months later than I had expected it to be. And that was me giving it a relatively conservative estimate, the release date. You know, it was just delay after delay after delay. It was just, they, you know, I mean, apparently a lot of the delay was caused by, you know, some members of the team becoming sick. I mean, it's understandable. You can't knock them for that. But again, man, 6 months. The product was delayed. They're promising us all these wonderful features, and at the end we get a very iffy product. The frames are dog shite. I don't run a bad system, and the frames are very poor, and there's nothing more of an immersion killer for me than shitty frames. Excuse the language. So that already right off the bat is turning me off. Again, not to compare to the TBM, but the TBM has all these wonderful features, you know, realistic engine management, a fatigue and damage model, and the frames are silky smooth. I mean, you could argue that this panel is less cluttered than the TBM, you know, and I mean, look how, I mean, it's still, the frames are still kind of crap, but I don't know, man. I would have liked a little bit more wear and tear. I mean, you can see that, you know, the paint is coming off here and there, if that even is what that's meant to be. You know, a little bit of inconsistencies there, but you know, I guess it's up to their discretion if they want to model a, you know, a brand new cockpit or an old one. But I feel like wear and tears, especially subtle signs of wear and tear, again, just really increase the immersion and the feeling of realism when it comes to these kind of aircraft. And just, you know, again, just to have waited 6 months after I anticipated the release being, again, that's my fault, not theirs, but again, it wasn't supposed to take that long, regardless of when I thought the product was supposed to be released. And just to have it finally get released and to get such, you know, an iffy product, as I said, crappy frames, the autopilot is crappy. Again, TBM autopilot, really wonderfully responsive, you know, it's smooth in its changes. It's got the same logic, right? The engage arm logic that this autopilot has, and it just does such a good job of handling it. Might not be perfect to the real thing, but at least it's doing a very good job of, you know, controlling the aircraft for you. This thing is so unpredictable. Like I said, or like you saw on departure, randomly, this thing pitched for the moon and disengaged. It also ended up disengaging the yaw damper. You know, I will say it's a bit more stable than what it was before, but again, as you saw, it's just really wonky. It wants to leap or jump, you know, make extreme changes to small changes to the VS that you make on the wind. It's really frustrating. But I will say this version is the best version of the product so far. I'm glad that they got that fuel gauge sorted out. I don't know what, you know, if the fuel counter is, or the endurance counter is supposed to remain inactive until you hit the reset button. I don't know if that's a real thing. But yeah, otherwise the autopilot test is now modeled, which is nice. The autopilot works a little bit better than before. The ground handling, especially on takeoff, is a lot better. She doesn't skate around on ice when you hit 60 knots. I still feel 60 knots is a bit slow of a rotation speed for a PC12, if I'm not mistaken. I know it's capable probably of taking off at 60 knots, but I don't think that's the normal rotation speed. So the fact that it got so super unstable, that slow in the regime, I think is a bit weird. But anyways, point is, it's been fixed. What else has been fixed? I think most of the changes revolved around the TDS GTN 750, a product that I don't use, so it doesn't really affect me that much. But I have to say, it's nice to see that other changes were made, other improvements. But again, the frame rates are still really shitty. I don't think that is acceptable if you consider what you're getting from the TBM. Completely different products, different companies, but again, the one is showing just how possible it is. And you know, I accept there's probably a lot more custom coding that goes along with the PC12, but again, I feel like probably the source of these shitty frames is this abomination here in the back. They put so much hype around this cabin, right? These avatars that move and the seats that move. You can change the, you know, things, the handrests or whatever. You can open the drawers, and apparently I think these things move around in flight. You know, you can flush the toilet. All really cute, gimmicky features, but it detracts away from what we actually, and this is what frustrates me about this company, just out of left field, right? 6 months after we thought this thing was going to be released, or at least months after we thought it was going to be released, after message indicating delay, 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 You know, we were expecting a fantastic product because they had so much extra time to play with it. And again, to get something with really shitty frames, very iffy autopilot, and then an announcement that we're not even going to get a damage model. The aircraft can't be damaged. There's no wear and tear model, is what I'm actually referring to. I don't care about 500 failures. I don't need them. I just want the plane to break if you mistreat it, just like one would in real life. It's not to say that I'm lazy and I need incentive to fly right. It's just to say that it's all about immersion for me. I'm sorry that I'm ending this stream on a rant. It's just, you know, this aircraft has me super frustrated purely because of how good it could have been. Like I said, big fan of SWS, love their Kodiak. Probably was the best turboprop before the TBM arrived. Beautiful sounds, decent handling, beautiful flight model or aircraft model, external model, and internally aircraft modeled really nicely. But we don't need these avatars. Now, what I'm trying to get at earlier, right? Months worth of delay, we finally get this product released. It's one of my favorite turboprops. I can't wait to fly it. I'm thinking if it's anything like the TBM or better, I'm not going to stop flying this thing. Only to get something with shitty frames, an autopilot that barely works, a fully fleshed out cabin, which, let's face it, nobody asked for. And this is what frustrates me, right, about this company. Coming at us out of left field, on release, or just before release, telling us, finally, we can release a product to you that you've all been waiting for. Oh, but by the way, where'd this guy come from? Oh, he's landing. Oh, but by the way, it's not going to include a wear and tear model. Or, you're not going to be able to damage the aircraft, especially on engine start. That's really all it comes down to for me, is I want to be able to properly manage the engine. If you become careless, something needs to break. That's part of the fun of flying, especially a simulated aircraft, right? But they say, oh, no one wants that, so we're giving you a vanilla engine model that just, won't break no matter what you do to it. So what I'm trying to get at is that no one asked for a fully fleshed out cabin, right? Yet they were gushing over their cabin here. They were like super excited, more excited than anyone else waiting for the product of this amazing cabin, right? Where you spend 1% of your time in. They spent what must have been an obscene amount of time modeling these avatars and these seats and animating everything, and it blows my mind that I feel like, how could you be so detached from your clientele? And to make matters worse, right, to rub salt into the wound, they're telling us that their data shows that most people prefer to not have a damage or wear and tear model, and a lot of people actually like having the cabins fleshed out. I feel like they could not be more wrong, right? You spend 1% of your time at most in the back of the cabin, right? And if you do, like me, you're probably, setting up a wing view back there. And that's really all I want my cabin to be, is to at least have, enough detail around the window that it looks real looking out. You feel like an actual passenger looking out of a real window at a real wing that is responsive to your flight controls. It's just, where are they getting their information from? Who wants this at the expense of frame rates? You know what I mean? Like, you want silky smooth frames. Nothing beats silky smooth frames other than a great sound set, right? just glide in on the approach with beautiful frames. But instead, this is what they gush over in the weeks prior to release, or the months prior to releasing the product, you know, promising us amazingly cool features, hidden features that will make, you know, flying that little bit more interesting or fun. I don't even think you can move this curtain. And yeah, at the end we end up with very iffy systems modeling with shitty frames and no damage model. Like, it just blows my mind that they couldn't be more wrong, or they couldn't understand their clientele more wrongly, right? I feel like their core supporting base, right? Their hardcore supporters like me are, you know, high fidelity, quote unquote, simmers, right? We want our aircraft to be as realistic as possible, as smooth as possible, you know, as frame efficient as possible. And of course, for audiophiles like me, we want a wonderful sound set. Now, I will say the sound set for this aircraft, really good. I'd say it's very good. It's not awesome, but it's very good. I'm not disappointed, to be honest. And that's saying a lot from someone like me that likes, or that obsesses over a sound pack, or can obsess over a sound pack. I mean, case in point, I bought a sound pack for my Cessna 152. You know what I mean? I do more flying in the 172, but I still decided to buy the 150. It was on discount, but I digress. Point is, SimWorks Studios, you guys need to wake up, man. I don't know where you're getting your information from. I don't think, well, actually, it's completely up to them who they want to support. I'm going to guess that, sure, the majority of the people buying their products are noob simmers, Xbox players that just want a PC12 to throw around in the sky. Job done, right? And that's making them the most amount of money. That's giving them the biggest return on investment. And from a business standpoint, I guess it makes sense to pander towards those people. In which case, whatever someone like me, a hardcore simmer, you know, staunch supporter of SWS, whatever I think doesn't matter at the end of the day. And that's what makes me really frustrated and very disappointed in the company, because they're just putting profits over, you know, passion. And I feel like that's what most of us, you know, are in this for. It's for the passion. You know, most of us are not these fly-by-nighters, Xbox players or Xbox simmers that, you know, came with the advent of this sim. You know, good for Microsoft trying to figure out ways to expand their user base. But I can't think of anything more laughable than simming on an Xbox. No offense to anyone who does that. But, you know, just to see an Xbox simmer complain about a product not being available to them, or not being, you know, as user-friendly to them as it could be, is just laughable in my mind. Get a PC, you nutbags, right? Again, this doesn't apply to anyone that can't afford a PC. I myself only recently was able to afford one, and to be honest, it's still debatable whether I could actually afford it or not, afford to throw that money away. But bottom line is, you know, I'm disappointed in this product. It's got potential. You know, the external model is freaking beautiful. They did an amazing job. You know, I had no idea that the controls were interconnected like this. I think that's so weird. You know, really, I had no idea. Does that technically mean that if you turn the flight yoke, the plane's nose wheel is going to turn? It's going to trigger the nose wheel steering? That's very bizarre, man. I have to say, my opinion of this aircraft has definitely changed. And again, as far as this product is concerned, I'm disappointed. I feel like the only way they can salvage this product is in future going forward in the install file of the game, the installer. I would recommend, just as you are expected to select the option of using the product with the GTN or with the default GPS, you should also have a little option to choose whether you want to install this aircraft with or without this cabin. Now, I'm not saying do away with the cabin. I just want them to make a basic version of this cabin. You know, get rid of the avatars. I don't care if the baggage shows or not. Even the avatars can be there, right? I mean, I think they're even in the Kodiak, and the Kodiak runs super smooth despite it, right? So it's possible. But I don't know, do something, whatever you can, to strip this cabin to the bare bones, but without making it look terrible, right? Again, look to your Kodiak. Do whatever you did there. You know, get rid of all the unnecessary animations and textures that do not need to be there. I would say, you know, focus on wing views. Like if you want real detail, you know, let your wing view, you know, let your windows get, you know, get some love. But, you know, again, I just do whatever you can just to bring the frames down, man. It's just, it shouldn't be as bad as it is. Anyways, I think that's as much as I'm going to say about this. I might still, you know, I still intend on doing aircraft reviews, but that requires me to actually sit down and do editing, and I'm not really good at that. So we'll see if I ever get to that point. Hopefully, by the time I get to reviewing this aircraft, they would have made some big improvements. But you know, until then, you know, if I had to put my say in right now, I'd give this aircraft a 6 out of 10 because no one ever asked me to rate anything. No one cares what I have to say, but 6 out of 10, man. I normally rate an aircraft based on how she looks, how she flies, and how she sounds. She looks great. She flies like her flying is meh, right? She yaws in the wrong direction in a crosswind, as you saw now, right? Supposed to yaw into the wind. Or did she yaw in the right direction? Did they fix that? Because initially, before this update, she yawed away from the wind. You're supposed to yaw into the wind if there's a crosswind. And then there was a lot of weird yawy motion on landing. Anyways, she did handle a little bit better on landing, I'm not going to lie. So yeah, handling is decent. It's okay. Looks are great. Sounds great. So yeah, probably should be maybe a 7 out of 10. But I'm going to knock off an extra point for the crappy frames. So yeah, my advice, not that anyone would heed it because this video has turned into a very long rant at the end of it, but yeah, give us a light version of the cabin that you can install with the aircraft. You know, do whatever you can to make the frames better and work on this autopilot. Beyond that, I think, you know, like I said, she's a good aircraft, but she could be so much more, and that's at the end of the day where I think the majority of my frustration lies. Anyways, thank you to anyone that may have joined me this far into the video. For your sake, I hope you didn't. Oh, there's another aircraft. Nice and busy here. Maybe I'll do some... No, I don't want to do some air traffic controlling. I don't want to waste daylight on that. I'm going to take a break, think about what other aircraft I can go flying in. maybe I'll move theater to the European scene and see if we can take, I don't know, something else out. Or I'll stay in South Africa. I don't know. We'll see. Thanks again, and see you soon.